We care about those late arriving ballots. We think they're unlawful ballots. Right there, I think that's enough of an injury.
It's just one of the voices heard yesterday in the U.S. Supreme Court about the issue of ballots being counted 2 weeks after Election Day. Welcome back, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. In this case, brought by Congressman Mike Bost, a Republican from Murfreesboro. Used to be a state representative, was actually made famous during budget debates at the Illinois State House. Gosh, this had to have been 15 years ago. When he threw papers all over the place and said he's sick of getting the the budget last minute. And that was like 15 years ago. Gosh, I'm just trying to recall that. But Bost, he obviously is in a safe district, right? The way the state's congressional maps are drawn by Democrats. But he sued in 2022 because of the law in Illinois that says you can count ballots that are postmarked on Election Day up to 2 weeks after Election Day. Now, this happened with absentee ballots since, I think, 2005. They kind of gave that window just to allow the mail to get, postmarked ballots to where they need to be. But it was for absentee. And then obviously during COVID, you had a massive expansion of mail-in balloting where you can request a permanent mail-in ballot where you always get a mail-in ballot. Or you can request one each year and get a mail-in ballot. You don't have to have an excuse or a reason like you're in the military overseas or you're taking care of your mom in Florida or whatever the case may be. So the mail-in balloting's been opened up. So Bost sued as a congressional candidate. Yeah, he's won election after election after election after election, but he sued. So the case in the lower courts, instead of getting to the merits, they instead decided to talk about standing. Does Bost have the standing? Is he injured by these ballots being counted 2 weeks after the fact? So let's go ahead and jump into this. Here's Paul Clement. He's the attorney for Mike Bost in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And again, this isn't about the issue of the mail-in ballots. This is about the issue of standing. Does Bost have the standing to bring this case against the state of Illinois? The question in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Those unlawful ballots could cost Congressman Bost the election or at least reduce his margin of victory, and he has to pay his campaign staff for 2 extra weeks. All of that means that Congressman Bost has standing 3 times over.
So he obviously has to expend money to have poll watchers watch these absentee or late arriving ballots up to 2 weeks after the case. And also just the fact that he's on the ballot, he has standing. Lower courts disagreed. And he went on to be asked questions by a variety of Supreme Court justices if this is just, a party issue. And Clement said he would stand with the Socialist Party to be able to have a candidate take a challenge to election law if they feel they're aggrieved by it. So he doesn't see this as a party issue. He sees this as an issue of, can a person on the ballot challenge election law they feel makes things unfair? So here's more from Paul Clement.
But I'm delighted to have those bedfellows because that's the way we think about elections in this country. We don't think, just give me the bottom line result. Give me the binary result, winner or loser.
And again, the question is in front of the court, the standing issue. But Clement said, he's aggrieved. Bost is harmed by these late arriving ballots he says are unlawful.
We care about those late arriving ballots. We think they're unlawful ballots. Right there, I think that's enough of an injury.
So another issues were brought up about the pocketbook injury. Bost having to expend resources to be at the vote count location when they're having these late arriving ballots come in up to 2 weeks.
Now in the last 2 weeks, I have to spend some money. If the election ends at Election Day, you're going to spend your money throughout the process differently. You're going to spend less money at the margins. You're going to spend less money directed at likely mail-in voters. You're going to spend a little more money at the margin on your voters who you think are actually going to go to the polls.
And this is in front of the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday. Clement was asked about what kind of remedy there should be with this standing issue and possibly even the issue of mail-in ballots no longer being allowed to be counted up to 2 weeks after the election in Illinois for federal elections.
If Illinois decides we're going to reverse this and we're going to close all the polls early and we're going to get rid of mail-in voting, I think any voter who comes in with a declaration and says, I want to vote by mail, I voted for mail.
That's a different hypothetical. What I'd like to do is focus on your standing argument, which we've said you have to have a particularized grievance, not a generalized grievance.
And then you get into a lot of different legalities with the various Supreme Court justices asking questions. And they did seem a split as to if Bost has standing. You got the conservative justices raising questions, but the liberal justices seeming to side with the states, and the Illinois Solicitor General, Jane Knotts, she addressed the issues and said that if standing was allowed for Bost, that'll open the floodgates.
Petitioner's blanket candidate standing rule would cause chaos for election officials while saddling federal courts with resolving abstract policy disputes.
And there was a lot of discussion about, listen, Bost is a safe candidate in a safe district. He's not going to be harmed by these late ballots. But, Bost's side says that's a gamble. It's like playing Russian roulette, they said. You got to have, clear consistency in election day is election day. You can't count ballots 2 weeks after the fact. So the question of standing is still very real, but you had Brett Kavanaugh, an associate justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, asking questions about this prognostication issue that they believe the state is asking courts to do. Right? If they look into the future in their crystal ball or read the tea leaves and they say, well, this candidate's not going to be harmed by these late arriving ballots, so he doesn't have a case. Or are the courts going to have to say, well, this candidate does have a possibility of being injured by these late arriving ballots, so he has a case. So it's this issue of prognostication, right? Trying to predict the future. Do the state's defendants in this case want the courts to play that game?
Bring the table. Okay, so we bring to the table polling data that shows you're down 20. Candidates that are down 20 sometimes make late breaks for it and win. Happens all the time. And you said expertise of campaign advisors. I respect them as much as anyone, but they can be wrong and they don't have perfect crystal balls either. I don't understand a standing rule that therefore depends on prognostication.
So Kavanaugh raising that issue, but also Neil Gorsuch raising that issue as well.
Is it 50%? Is it 60%? You've resisted giving us a number. And I would just ask you, if you could, what you think that threshold should be. And then along the way, is there something unseemly about federal courts making prognostications about a candidate's chance of success immediately before an election that itself might influence the election? Thoughts?
Yes, so I hear maybe two questions in there, and I am resisting giving a number because that is consistent with this court's cases. The court has said...
Okay, so no number. You're not going to give us a number. How about the second part of the question?
Sure, and maybe could you repeat that for one?
Is there something unseemly about a federal court in the middle of an election saying you don't have standing because you're going to win, or you do have standing because you might lose? And that itself might influence the electoral process.
Again, that's Neil Gorsuch asking Jane Knotts, the Illinois Solicitor General, about this issue of prognostication. Knotts said, again, in some more detail, that giving Bost standing in this case will allow for others on the ballot. It's easy to get on a ballot, she said, to challenge election law, and that will strain local resources and tie up the courts.
First, it would create chaos for election officials. It is very easy to be a candidate. Any self-declared candidate could challenge any election rule that they happen to have a policy disagreement with, even if that rule were entirely harmless. And election officials who are tasked with actually running elections would have to divert their time and energy and litigate, these policy-based disputes, and then federal courts in turn would be put in the position of resolving these, disputes via advisory opinions, which is exactly what this court's standing cases have dictated.
Now, after the state presented their defense, you had the plaintiffs come back for just a final round, and you had Paul Clements for Bost say this is a case about standing, but it's also about elections.
They want you to look at this declaration and say, well, he's a 10-time incumbent, so he's got a higher standard of showing how these ballots are going to hurt him. Or maybe it's easier for a different incumbent. That way lies madness.
What's going to happen? Will there be changes before the 2026 election? Again, this is on the issue of standing. Unless the court does something that I'm not familiar with and just abruptly takes the issue on the merits, things got to go back to the district court and go all the way back up. So we'll be watching that, and if that's going to happen before 2026. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus Daily.